Okay, so welcome back to the CineFiles. Today's topic is werewolf flicks. This is part of our 3 weeks of Halloween. We're going to be doing a Halloween episode per week leading up to October 31st. And before we begin, here is our usual co-demons, co-wolves, whatever. Jeff Galashaw.
The alpha, of course.
The alpha dog.
Exactly.
We have Lola Rock and Rolla. What would that make you?
Asking you, not me.
We're gonna have to fight for it, I think, for the alpha.
I think we got two alphas.
Yeah.
Me, I run from danger. And Eric Cohen. And today we're giving the hosting duties to Jeff since this was his topic.
I guess that does make you the alpha.
Exactly. I'll talk about the subject first before I talk about the specific reasons of why I picked these. Because I got tired of this whole vampire love society we have, where it's always, oh, vampires are so romantic and they all have love stories and it's just so cool to be a vampire. And I always felt like all the other monsters or creatures of the night never get enough love. Like werewolves, while these movies have always made it look very painful. What do you mean? What don't you understand?
Well, London was a love story.
No, but I feel like we always talk about Dracula or all these great vampire films, and Hollywood's tripping over themselves with crap like the Twilight Saga. But then when it comes to horror, it's like werewolf is sometimes mentioned. I mean, look at the Blade series.
It's because they're hairy.
Well, but
like
we're going to be talking about some very popular.
I know they're
people are scared of body hair. That's why.
Let me put it to you this way: if I came up, in fact, we've done a vampire show. We had a long list of movies to pick from. You mentioned werewolves, not as long a list, and I always root for the
agree. There's
underdog.
been a trend in vampire films lately. But even the vampire films have werewolves in them.
Sometimes, and it's usually versus, like what Underworld Part 3 or Underworld in general.
Right, But even in Twilight films, there are werewolves. True Blood, there are werewolves. I mean,
yes, but they're not glamorized.
Twilight isn't it's a threesome scenario with a werewolf. Isn't one of?
I don't know if it's a threesome.
I couldn't watch the whole thing.
I couldn't tell you because I'm not really familiar with that series. Seriously, I'm not.
No, it's terrible. Don't ever watch those movies.
But I know they're involved in somehow. But right. I just got tired of
it is threesome with a werewolf. That's my next film. Is threesome with a werewolf.
Threesome with a werewolf.
I will go see that one in the theater.
But it's like a Russ Meyer, Andy Milligan flick.
Yes, women with a lot of body.
I'm sorry, we keep interrupting you.
I'm just saying, it's just that I always felt vampires are more romanticized. I mean. These films don't really help take werewolves out of being, like the favorite, but it shows they can do significant damage and have, afflictions of their own.
The thing that was always appealing to me when it came to werewolves, same reason why Jekyll and Hyde was always appealing to me, is the transformation aspect.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I always stuck around for the transformation.
Well, and that's also a really big thing in the werewolf movies, is all about the transformation.
Exactly. And there's always that's the pinnacle scene in any movie.
Yeah.
So what's the first film we're going to talk about?
Well, I decided to go against a popular opinion of An American Werewolf in London. And
love that movie.
Because it's a classic. We'd all agree. And
it
would just be a best of bits. So I decided to go a different way in a film that is known, but until recently, I haven't actually watched from beginning to end fully. The Howling.
Yeah, there's a reason why you didn't watch it from beginning to end.
Well, I mean, it was always on television. I always catch pieces, but, I never was like, ooh, TV Guide. I got to watch it at 5 o'clock and watch it till the end. So, and I think this was the best viewing for me because I think it's not a bad film. Let me just start off by saying that.
Oh, absolutely not a bad film.
No, it's not a bad film, but I think if I watched it when I was younger, I think I would have liked it more nostalgically. Then
I tried to watch this as a rabid horror fan when I was younger, and it just didn't get to the werewolf soon enough. Like the minute she was in the porno theater, I was like, then I just changed the channel. Like I was just bored. It was like, get to the action, to the action.
But see, that's one of the interesting aspects to me for it as a film.
I completely did. When I was a kid, it was like, wow, we got boobs within the first 5 minutes of the film.
I'm a huge fan.
And then we got like a lot of gore and violence. And yeah, the werewolves don't come till later, but I was like, this film rocks.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I can see it
I'm
as
a big fan of both of those things.
I can see it as more of an exploitive when it begins because it starts off as a really weird thriller where you're thrown into it. But
another thing is she is so weak. She is so goddamn weak.
It was the 1980s.
Well, we should explain. We're kind of getting ahead of themselves, but the film was directed by Joe Dante. It was
Yes.
like his first real mainstream film outside the Roger Corman thing.
Right.
Yes.
And D. Wallace Stone, of E.T. fame, stars in it as this reporter who is doing a case on this like serial killer, I guess, character, and she winds up having such a traumatic experience from it.
That
She's
she
kind
gets
of mentally,
amnesia.
from the situation, and she's sent to a special camp that's supposed to help deal with her trauma.
Well, one of the things, it's strange for a film that involves so much gore and violence, but it's actually kind of a very fun movie because you can't really take anything seriously in this film. And
Especially not that love scene by the fire.
I love that scene.
But
Where they both become...
it's the
werewolf
effects.
sex.
Oh, it's so fun. How come they're doing it doggy style if it's
Holy
werewolf sex?
shit.
It doesn't make sense.
Well,
Man,
they weren't thinking
I'm gonna-
about that then, but I mean, the effects are impressive for its time. I mean, the whole thing about this film is everything is so dated, but if
Yeah.
you watch it now.
Yeah,
But you know, at the time, it was cutting edge, and
Which
even
is hilarious to think about now.
and here's the weird thing: even though American Werewolf in London has the better transformation, it looks a lot more painful in this film, the transformations, because it looks like everything is bubbling under the skin.
Well, and the snoot is really well done.
Exactly.
But
and
that's another thing with the lead actress being so weak. Even when she becomes a werewolf, she looks like a Ewok or something.
yeah, she looks like a cute werewolf. That's
She's
the
very
one.
pretty. Where I agree.
She
but,
is weak even as
okay,
a werewolf.
I gotta say something.
Uh-oh.
I love The Howling.
Okay.
The Howling is probably my favorite werewolf movie of all time.
Wow.
And I did see it recently
the
to
boobs.
see how well it held up, and I thought it held up magnificently well. Really? I do think the transformation sequence in American Werewolf in London is better,
Okay.
but I think Howling is the better movie.
No way.
I have
you're
to-
welcome to your
Oh,
opinion.
it's such a
I disagree a little.
Oh,
it's so much
dated.
fun, and it's so tongue in cheek, and you can tell that Joe Donnie is a Looney Tunes fan. You see that
Yes,
influence in this
definitely.
film all over the place. I love Patrick McNee. John Steed plays the main therapist. Although it's never clear if he's a werewolf too.
He is.
I believe.
He
gets
just says
shot
thanks
at
for the bullet at the end, whatever.
No, he gets shot at the end. He's thanking for the bullet because he's a
But
werewolf.
I would say if there's anything dated about it, the effects are
everything.
spectacular. Well, I think the effects, but you could tell it's mechanics. You can tell,
drawn. Some
the
of it
time
is
was
drawn.
spectacular, and it goes on for way too long.
It's only 90 minutes.
The transformation
I
sequence
thought you
goes
meant the
on
whole
way
movie.
too long. It goes on way too
The
long.
movie goes on too long.
Has a great line. I want to give you a piece of my mind. How can you guys think this is
Dated?
Yeah.
I'm like,
What other than that
just
was
kinda-
dated
It's so
about it?
corny. I mean, even like the love scene by the fire, it's so corny. It looks like a tampon commercial. Or
It's
something.
like a movie your uncle
Dracula.
will tell you.
Dracula.
That's
Universal.
between the two of you.
excuse me.
Not me.
Dracula
I'm sorry,
is a
they won't
classic.
know what we're talking about until that airs, which won't air before
Dracula
this.
is a classic film. That's all I'm saying.
That-
Every
I'm
other
just-
Dracula
I
is
mean,
based on
like I said,
Dracula.
I know
You will like
don't take
Dracula.
this personally, but when I watch the film, I look at it as a piece of history, cinematic history. I enjoy it. I think it is a good film, but I'm more in the modern day, so I just look at it. I watch it with a smile on my face, but I don't take any of it seriously. I admit.
You're not supposed to take it seriously.
I know, but I mean, the effects impress me. Her I guess husband. He
I
looks.
thought you were gonna say acting.
He looks like a male porn star in this film.
Yeah.
And so his fate is not that surprising. And the little piece of trivia I find the most interesting is the guy who ends up, spoiler alert, shooting her at the end is now a director of comedies and Adam Sandler movies.
So The Howling, that came out when? Like 1983?
I thought it was 1980.
Oh, 1980?
I thought
Yeah.
the whole film was so corny. It was just so corny.
She's mad at me because I
No, I mean, it's like I'm just surprised because
like
we
you slapped
kind
her.
of like no.
Will
it's
this
cool.
affect our bromance?
No, we're
Because
still having a bromance.
I don't want our
baby.
bromance
High
to
five
be
up
affected
here.
by.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It's on.
Awesome. So the
Bromance
next
all
film.
around.
The next film, I figure we'll stay in the 1980s and go with a little curiosity known as In the Company of Wolves. That was directed by one of my favorite directors, Neil Jordan. I don't really know how to describe this film except to say it's kind of like a storybook, and it also kind of satirizes fairy tales to a degree.
Well, it's based on the novel by Angela
She wrote the book too.
Angela Carter.
So
I'm
talented.
going to say that again. It's based on a book by Angela Carter, and she was like the forerunner of what they would call like magical realism, you know?
okay.
And so that her book, I haven't read the book.
Oh, I haven't.
But a lot of her
I've never
books,
heard
like she's sort of, she's like, she was a popular. Her stories were always tinged with feminism. There was magical realism. She was considered sort of like a female Ray Bradbury almost.
Okay.
But dealt a lot with sexuality and feminism and all that stuff. But this is like a good example of her work.
And I thought Neil Jordan represented the story very well. I love the visuals. This was the first time I've ever seen Angela Lansbury in anything other than Murder, She Wrote. So it was a kind of a little shock to me.
Him watching Murder, She Wrote.
I didn't watch it every week.
He watched the final episode first and worked his way through the pilot.
It was on for a lot of years.
He just saw the last Breaking Bad too. And
Right. He started off with the episode where Magnum PI appeared. Cameo.
But the weird thing about this film is rewatching it, I don't remember half of this film, or I remembered it a totally different way. I mean, both ways were good, but for some odd reason, I remember this film being a little more violent than when I resaw it. And, I mean, I think it's an amazing film, effects-wise. I mean, I like the whole little story about never trusting a man. They say, whose two eyebrows meet, but basically, if a man has a unibrow, don't trust him.
Right.
And, I thought that was like, it was kind of witty and everything. And like you said, I like that it dealt with...
Tom Cruise used to have a unibrow.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Can't trust him.
Tweaks that motherfucker, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Be like, it shows you something about him. But that's not a show about him, and I'm not ready for
What
life.
the hell are you talking about?
I don't know.
I was
It's
talking
my
about Tom
fault.
Cruise. I was going off on a tyrant.
Stay in the subject.
Okay.
It's my fault.
Anyway, but no, I really enjoyed this film. I think it's one of the better werewolf movies, and it goes back to what I was talking to you about with romanticism with vampires. This, to me, out of all the films we'll probably talk about today, shows more of a romanticism with werewolves. They're still brutes, but it doesn't show them to be these like just bloodthirsty characters.
It's the closest thing to like say it all started with Anne Rice and the Lestat stuff,
Right.
Yeah. It's the closest thing to like you said, a romantic take on werewolves that's been applied towards vampires. I agree with that. I like the film. I think it's flawed in some ways.
Okay.
I think it's a little overabundant in symbolisms to the point where it's kind of pretentious.
You're like, all right.
But
it rears its ugly head.
But it's basically an anthology horror movie.
Yeah, because one story always seems to lead to another.
And it's the production values are outstanding. It has a Hammer feel to it, which I think Neil Jordan was going for. But the transformation scenes aren't just very well done, but they're imaginative as hell. Like the idea that a person rips off his skin and the bones of and then the sinew, muscles of that person becomes the werewolf, and the screen grows
that was
back.
amazing.
That's ingenious. That's just really, really cool. And I like the whole concept of Little Red Riding Hood, the woodsman being the wolf and vice versa, and she gives in to the wolf at the end and becomes one herself. All that stuff is just really kind of cool.
And the use of real wolves in later scenes.
And yes, which was unusual at the time.
I liked it. I thought it was weird. Yeah.
It wasn't dull, was it?
It wasn't dull. I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't like
It wasn't cheesy.
Was it dated?
Not as dated as the Howling. Look how mad he is. Oh, it's okay. I probably had a problem with the Howling because she was so weak. I hate when the female characters are that weak in horror movies. I should be used to it.
Well, this
now.
is overabundant with female
Yeah,
characters.
it sure is, and they're not that weak, So, I thought it was a good film. I don't know, it's not my favorite werewolf movie. I can't really, for me to have a wolf as I know you want your romantic lead to be a wolf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a dark, folks. It's a dark fairy tale more than it is a horror film.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a Brother Grimm story as they should be told and not sanitized for children. And it's Angela Carter. If you're familiar with her work, it's very much an Angela Carter take on this kind of thing, which she is known for.
Next, we're going to talk about a film that's a little more different from the film we just discussed. Dog Soldiers, which is directed by Neil Marshall, which I felt more takes an action look at werewolves more than, getting mixed up in lore or, supernatural. And the interesting story about this film is I remember when it came out, when I was working at Tower Video, and there was a huge buzz about this film. And me being typical Jeff, I skipped all that buzz and didn't watch it for nearly a decade. But me watching it now, I have to say, I found the film rather more, it falls. It has there's a certain disappointment. It starts off really well, but again, more like an action film. Then it seems to fall apart or it gets lost in its story, if there ever was one, because it still seems more about, hey, we're stuck in this cabin. We have to defend ourselves against these marauding, tall werewolf, half man, half werewolf creatures.
I don't entirely disagree with you.
Okay.
It's a strange movie. I think it's entertaining. It's one of those things. If it's on a Saturday, sit down, watch it, and you'll have, it's fine.
Okay.
I do think, though, it's one of those films that goes in and out, where you remember it's about soldiers stuck in a house, and they're all turning to wolves one by one, or they're fighting the wolves, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, it's aliens with werewolves. That's what it is. That's the conceit, but on a much lower budget. Much lower budget, right? Mm-hmm. With all the grunt soldiers, but, in Scotland, as opposed to, future outer space, whatever. But anyway, the point is that the problem with the film is I find there's so much about that's unmemorable after you watch it.
Yeah.
Like just as you were going through that, I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, what do I remember about this film? There's a female character in the film. That's right. Why is the female character in the film again? I can't remember. And then I'm sitting here going, wait, were the soldiers just on maneuvers? Were they just on a training exercise? But they weren't, because they had this girl in tow. Why they have the girl? And you have, like in Aliens, you have the one asshole soldier dude that almost ruins it for everybody else. That whole thing.
You have the one who's like, oh, tell my wife I love her. And
I think the film, for the most part, is very well done. But I thought I was a Neil Marshall fan. And I realized, actually, I thought Neil Marshall had promise.
Okay.
But he hasn't really done anything that's really impressed me.
What else did he do?
Centurion?
He did Centurion, which is okay. And then he did that god-awful Escape from New York ripoff.
Yeah, I can't even remember the name of the film.
Escape from no. Again, it took the idea that Scotland has become basically Escape from New York. It's become its own, right? But it's so terribly done, and it's just, I think he's just such a fanboy of what he likes that there's no depth to. He doesn't have any capability of applying depth or making it his own thing.
It's because the story is lacking. There's some good scenes, but if you don't have a good story, you can't really. You know what I mean?
And the werewolf designs aren't that impressive.
It's weird because, like, they're really tall. They have the head of the beast, like you said, the arms of the beast. But then everything else is just hair. But they stand like men and they have no genitals.
They ran out of money. I liked it, but it's just not my favorite.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I was entertained for a little bit. But
were you aware of it through the festival hype? Because this is like what the films we're discussing. This is like the internet hype. The only internet hyped film.
I actually don't.
Except for the Howling.
I don't remember the hype about this particular film, which is weird.
I remember, like, this came out around when Ain't It Cool News, I think, started, and everyone was talking about Dog Soldiers, like the greatest horror movie of all time. Of all time, but in a long time, and blah blah blah. And everyone, it was like internet culture really boosted this film
and blew it.
Well, then it must speak to people somehow. I mean, I don't know. It was entertaining, but that's about it.
Understandable.
And the thing is, too, a good film could have been made out of it, because I like the idea of British soldiers in the Scottish Highlands having to fight werewolves. It has that's a great idea.
They just couldn't bring it together to make it interesting.
It was just a siege film. Yeah. That's all it was.
It became simple after a while.
Yeah.
Ginger snaps. Is
it overlooked? It had a bit of a...
It had, well, I mean, obviously it had a buzz
internet buzz,
to be sequels.
And it had a bit of a cult following.
Yeah, and there's like,
have, like, sequels.
5 sequels or something.
But at least with this one, I can understand why. Because this one differs from the sequels. I mean, it still contains the main story, but I feel like this is the only really good one out of the series. It's basically 2 sisters who are very close, and, they're more gothic. They're outcasts, and then one of the girls is attacked by a werewolf and slowly starts to become one. But, as with you were talking about Angela Carter, it's also tied in with femininity and puberty. Heavily. And, it's shot in Canada, and the biggest star in the movie really is, like, Mimi Rogers. I mean, Catherine Isabelle, who eventually started becoming a scream queen in Canada, plays the main role of Ginger. This film, it's interesting. I remember when it came out, I loved it. I thought it was like one of the best films that I had seen that year. But watching it now recently, I see problems in the film. I still like it, but I can still see things that I think it loses its power totally.
I like the film. My girlfriend loves the film.
Okay.
And I think it's okay. I think they're part.
Same way.
Like for me, I wanted to love the film because it's like about female empowerment, and I'm always down for like women killing people because the genre in general is always women getting killed and like tripping when there's a chainsaw in back of them. So I'm always down for okay, we have like some women doing the killing for a change and it's their story, but it just wasn't that good a movie.
Well,
I wanted it to be better. I really wanted it to be really good.
I thought some of the stuff was like half-assed.
Yeah.
I thought that I don't know why they insisted that one of the lead characters wear a wig throughout the entire film.
Oh no, there was a reason for that because she had made a film previously where she had to shave her head, but she had already contractually signed to do this film. So that was the only.
They could have chosen a better wig. I mean,
I don't know.
It's just little things that like take you out of the movie.
Okay.
Stuff like that. I think the story, we've seen it before.
Okay.
We have like two characters who are considered outcasts from society. One of them starts to come into their own and starts to become the popular kid, whereas the other one still doesn't, remains behind, and how that affects that dynamic. We've seen that played out before.
Okay.
Not to mention the fact we've seen the other kind of variation in this, where one of them turns out to be psychotic, and the other one it has to take it upon themselves whether or not to destroy this person or love this person.
Yes, sure.
We've seen this before, and I'm not sure it brought anything new to the table. I think it's one of those films that feels kind of like the people behind it think it's much more clever than it actually is.
Okay.
I understand, and there's a good story to be told about the analogy or using the metaphor of the werewolf transformation with puberty and stuff like that.
Okay.
And I hate to say this, I jokingly meant this before. I thought Teen Wolf did a better job.
Seriously?
Sorry.
I don't know about that.
Even though it's a comedy. I mean, but it's I don't know.
Huge Michael J. Fox fan.
It's one of those films that I find myself getting impatient with too as I watch it.
I just was really rooting for it. I just wanted it to be amazing, and it's almost. I don't know. It's disappointing.
I didn't see the immediate sequel, but I saw the one that was like a prequel.
Yeah, the third one.
Which I thought had an interesting look to it, but I didn't see it all the way through, unfortunately, and I wanted to. For some reason, I had to be pulled away from it. But that actually looked kind of interesting.
It was interesting. I think you'd like the second film because the young girl who stars on Orphan Black.
I feel the same way about this film as I just realized as I do Sleepaway Camp.
Uh-oh.
Where I know they're two totally different things, but it's like you're with me. I'm like I want it to be good. Yes, we're almost there, and then it just never quite.
You're like, that's it?
Yeah, exactly. Although Sleepaway Camp is hilarious because
the ending.
The ending, they care more about
the batshit crazy ending.
Well, yeah, they care more about him being a tranny than they do that he just murdered like 20
Spoiler
people.
alert.
Oh, sorry. We'll get there when the
it's the most well-renowned twist.
I'm just saying. I just want to cover all bases.
Everyone talks
it's the crying
Well,
game.
I like Ginger Snaps. Well, I like Ginger Snaps, despite all of it.
It's worth watching.
I think it goes to your Dracula. You grew up with it.
Right.
Maybe because I grew up with it, I like it so much, even though, like you said, I've seen it done before. But for some reason, this one felt more personal to me.
I feel
even though I'm not a young girl.
I'm going to make a weird comparison. And it's not going to be like a Sleepaway Camp comparison.
Yeah, that's pretty weird.
Because Sleepaway Camp wasn't trying to be a good movie. It wasn't trying to be a thought-provoking piece. It was,
you sure about that?
I could be wrong.
Maybe in the back of his mind.
I'm sure there are people out there that will defend it in healthy ways.
So homophobic too. That guy has some issues.
Truly.
Yeah.
But I was going to say though that the film that this kind of reminds me of, and I had the same reaction to, was May. In a certain kind of way.
Another one of my favorites.
May.
I love that
again,
film.
It was a film that I just couldn't get into. I just found myself annoyed by all the characters involved. And I found myself, why am I watching this? Why do I care about these characters?
Let him finish what he has to
And I think
say.
that's the biggest problem I have with Ginger Snaps, actually. I found both the sisters completely unsympathetic. Like the younger sister is supposed to be the heroine of the piece. She goes back and forth between incredibly annoying. and selfish. And then they try to conveniently place her in sort of like the sympathetic, well, she has to be the heroine, so we have to remind the audience they need to like her kind of thing.
Okay.
And that might be the biggest problem I have with film, that I just don't feel invested enough in the characters to like care about what's going to happen to them.
Okay.
I wanted more gore. I was like, just do it. Come on.
They had a limited budget.
Still, corn syrup. Get it
Mike
done.
Foltz wants more tits.
Can we get back to why he's not a teenage girl, but he really likes this film?
I also, surprisingly, I like the movie Wolf with Jack Nicholson, directed by Mike Nichols.
It's an interesting film. I'm not a big fan, but there's some good things in it.
But as I said, as you can see, it's kind of rare to find a really noteworthy or a decent werewolf film.
Yeah, I can't think of any other ones. Teen Wolf 2.
I saw that in theaters.
There's a really interesting film, actually, A Werewolf in Washington.
I've never even heard of
Dean Stockwell. Dean Stockwell. It's a political satire, but it's like one of the cabinet members is a werewolf, and
I'd go see it for Stockwell.
That's a Mystery Science Theater 2000 episode waiting to happen, but it's kind of cool.
Shut down. Here we go.
Anyway, so is that it? We're done? I think we're done. Okay.
See, watch my werewolf film. I was a tranny werewolf. It's about a woman who can't get rid of her body hair, so she kills everyone.
Cue.
How's that for a plug?
Cue the footage. What's the transformation scene like?
Transformation scene was really fun. She it basically waxes things, and as soon as she waxes them, the hair just grows right back. So it's really just a bummer thing, because she just wants to not have hair on her body.
Did you do a dissolve thing, or did you?
No, we did a stop motion. It took forever. It took 5 hours to do the mustache and the stop motion pubic hair, and that's ridiculous.
All right.
Stop motion
and
pubic
so
hair.
and it just grows back. She goes to a waxer, and then it just grows back like that. And then she just decides, it's about acceptance of yourself.
So that ends our episode on werewolf flicks. And thank you, Jeff, for these interesting films, even though we didn't entirely agree on all of them. But I didn't hate any of the films.
Okay, as long as it wasn't total hate.
Check us out on Facebook. Check out all of our Twitter accounts. They've been flashing up on the screen during this discussion.
Unfinished Business.
Including it, which is also flashed up on the screen. Check out our Google Plus page. We got 2 of them. We got a circle and we got a page. Happy Halloween, folks. Stay safe. Don't drink and drive. Don't take any candies from strangers, even though that's what Halloween's usually about.
And beware of men or women whose eyebrows meet.
That's true. Many lessons.
Werewolves of London.